a lot of customers, they'll just start out with some GT1s, get some dots on a map. You'd be surprised what you can get for just the location. You can do a ton of things with just the dot on the map.
So you guys are ready? You're ready? You will call me ready, so let's do this.
All right.
Welcome to OGGN Pitch. It's the show we talk to companies that have great products and services that serve the oil and gas industry. We've got Geoforce here today. Mike Svoboba. Mike is the regional sales manager for Geoforce, and in the past he's been a customer success manager, and in the past he's been a customer of Geoforce. So he's had a long career working with these products and services, so he's got a number of good perspectives on how this works. So welcome to the show. And
thank you.
Tell us what Geoforce does and how do you help your customers?
So Geoforce, we specialize in asset tracking, and we track vehicles. Those are our two specialties. We track fleets of vehicles, anywhere from small fleets of pickups up to multi-thousand unit big trucks, and anybody doing electronic logs. We do cameras. We do dash cameras.
Okay. So
we can. That's our specialty. And then our asset tracking. We have satellite trackers, cellular trackers, and then ones that do both. So we can tell you where your rental assets are, where your equipment is. Keep an eye on everything.
Okay, so there's a lot that we're going to talk through on each of those areas. How long has the company been around, and how big is it employee-wise? Give me some context on that.
So the company was founded in 2007. Jimmy McLean, our CEO and founder, he was an employee. He did offshore. He worked offshore in Louisiana, and he found a need. A company that he was working with had a need for offshore satellite tracking. So that's how he started the company. And then now we've grown to over 100 employees, and we've got, we're in over 95 countries.
Okay.
Tracking assets in 95 countries around the world. So, yeah.
Cool. So you've got a couple of these here, and we were banging them on the table so that we didn't mess up. We were practicing banging them on the table so that we wouldn't mess up the sound. So this one was the one I picked up. It's actually kind of heavier. And this one, we'll see if that...
Oh, yeah.
This one is much heavier, and it's got... I assume that's got a screen on it.
Yeah, it's a solar. Yeah, it's a solar panel, so that it'll. Yep. So
tell me about, because when I looked at the website, there's a range of different devices. So kind of lay out, not in too much detail, but just lay out what are the differences in the devices and why do the different devices exist?
Yeah. So this device here, the GT1, that's going to be this is our bread and butter device right here. And this one came out before. This is the GT2, so that's the second edition. So this device here, this can be programmed anywhere from 1 to 48 times a day. And if most customers, they'll use it either once or twice a day. It is enough for assets that don't move very often. Plus then you maximize the battery life on them. At 2 times a day, you're looking at 8 to 10 years of battery life on this thing. So that's really good. A lot of times it'll outlast the asset that it's mounted to. And then as far as mounting options go, it's got holes on it, so you can bolt them on or you can screw them on. But what's really nice is this is also stainless steel, so you can weld it on as well.
Ah, okay.
Which comes in handy for all kinds of reasons in the oil business.
Right.
So that's the 1 to 48 times a day. And then the GT2. This is you can program it the same way, but what's also great about this is you can do motion reporting. So it'll check in twice a day, but if your asset moves, then it'll check in depending on which one, because we've got 3 different types of this. You can have it check in as little as every 5 minutes, and then we've got other different profiles that varying costs, but you can have it. Yeah, every 5 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour, that type of thing when it's in motion. And then again, you can weld this on as well.
Okay. And so these devices, did y'all design them? How much of it do you make? How much of it is standard kind of stuff?
Yeah, so this is a proprietary device, actually
Okay.
invented and sold by Geoforce.
Okay.
It's our own product. We have a development. There's a company that Geoforce acquired early on in Montana. That's where they do our designing up in Bozeman.
Okay.
And just before I set this down, the solar panel on this one,
Yep.
even if this thing's checking in every 5 minutes, allows this thing to last 10 plus years. So we've been at market with this for 4 to 5 years now. So we're still, based on the battery levels that we're seeing, we're confident that we're going to get 10 plus years out of these units.
Okay. So when I was reading the website, it looked like some of these can monitor things on the equipment that they're attached to.
Yes.
How does it do that?
Well, so these particular devices don't do that.
And
but
that's what I figured. The ones we were looking at, I was like, okay, this probably
Yes.
doesn't do the flashy stuff the website was talking about.
That's right. So we have some devices that you can mount, like if there's a port on there, like an ECM port
Okay.
Or an OBD port on a vehicle that plug directly into those. And we've got harnesses for everything. Anything yellow iron, John Deere, Komatsu, all that stuff. We can plug into anything. We can get runtime off of anything, and we can get most engine diagnostic data and fuel
Okay.
usage, things like that, off of other assets.
Okay, and you just answered one of the questions that was, as a former IT guy, that was in my mind. It's like, okay, is it plugging in, or is it actually got its own detectors in it that it can
Well,
track?
so there's some companies, they're very proprietary with their stuff.
Yep.
The yellow iron, the Caterpillars.
Yep.
They're very proprietary, very protective of the data that comes off that port. So there are some that we do get blocked on.
Okay.
But we can still get runtime, and we can still collect some data off those. But what's nice about our software is we have APIs and integrations where we can pull those directly in using their own proprietary information, where it'll actually show a dot on a map in our software and pull in the engine data and things like
Okay.
that. So if we can't get it, we can integrate with somebody who can.
Okay. And that was one other thing when I was looking at the website, that you've got the devices, and so do people buy the device, or do they subscribe to the device? How do they normally
So we
get?
have two different models. We do what we call a TPM deal, kind of a CapEx, where you buy it up front, and then you pay us a subscription fee. The bill ends up almost looking like a cell phone bill, like
Okay.
if you had a multi-line cell phone plan.
Yep.
So that's kind of what we're modeled after. And our cellular devices actually are, like they're Verizon. We have AT&T and T-Mobile too.
Okay.
And then in other countries we have some of their local providers. But yeah, so the bill kind of ends up looking like a cell phone, where you buy the device up front, and then you pay the subscription. But we also do what we call the rental model, where if you don't want to come out of pocket, because some small companies, they prefer to operate that way, where you don't have to come up with a lump of cash all at once, where we'll take the cost of the units and then break it over like a 36 or 60 month contract, depending on what you prefer. And that's another great thing about us, is we're really flexible. We have contracts 1 year, 5 years, and then whatever's favorable to the customer, or whatever they want to do.
Okay. So then you've got the devices. It sounds like you're providing the connectivity, so customers don't have to build something on their side, particularly in some unusual location that they may be operating. So then you've talked about software. So what does the software do?
So our software, it does a lot of different things. As far as, you'd be surprised what you can get for just the location. You can do a ton of things with just the dot on the map. You can do all of your inventory. You can monitor like how many what we call dwell time, like how much time something is spent like in the yard versus out of the yard. Your utilization. So that's a lot of just information with your dot on the map. Now with your vehicle tracking, you can do everything. Anything from IFTA reports or a lot of our customers, well, all of them are with ISNet World or Geoforce.
Okay.
We can auto-generate reports and take a lot of time or save a lot of time on things like that. And then also like the safety scorecards are big. So all of our customers that use use our vehicle trackers, they'll usually have like a weekly scorecard and something that shows up on a Monday. That way they can do their coaching. They can monitor speed. They can set, monitor like speed over the limit, max speed, so if somebody's going over 90, things like that. Also seatbelt usage. And then our cameras, using our cameras, you can really monitor, it's kind of a a la carte feature. Yeah. If you don't want your people on their phones while they're driving, it's got AI built in. So it's, it can differentiate from a phone from a cigarette, which you can also, if you don't want your people smoking in the vehicles. And also if the driver's going down the road, nodding off,
right.
it knows, and it can alert them to wake up or, if they're drifting, things like that. Also like follow distance. It's pretty in depth and pretty comprehensive what it can monitor.
Okay. So then the use cases that tend to, well, let's be blunt, that quickly lead to sales for
Yes.
you guys. Is it more the finance organization that wants to track inventory? Is it more the safety people? I mean, what is the most compelling thing that drives somebody to adopt y'all's product and services?
So I'd say there's two. Our ideal customer profile would be, owner of a business. I'm tired of losing my stuff. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily theft, but within the oil business, everybody knows you got employees that care to varying degrees about your equipment. They're never going to care about it as much as you do, and so you've got like rentals that never came back. So that's much more common than you would think.
Right.
Even if you got 100 pieces of equipment, if you talk to any business owner in the Permian, if they've got 100 units, they don't know where 2 or 3 of them are.
Yeah,
that's pretty normal. And a lot of times that pays for the whole service right there, is just those 1 or 2 units that we keep you from losing. And then the other is safety. The safety department calls us and says, our guys drive terrible. We're getting in accidents all the time. Help us coach them. And using our vehicle trackers and safety scorecards and cameras, we get pretty large reductions. Like we're talking like 75% reductions in like speeding tickets, accidents, and recordable incidents. So it's a pretty remarkable decrease.
Okay. And you've kind of already answered one question, but one thing I was thinking about was just, we've all seen in movies where somebody puts a tracker on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And then that person figures it out. They take the tracker off and they put it on a bus going to,
Yes.
1,000 miles away and nobody knows. So people are welding these things to equipment. Yes. So what is the most common way that people make sure the device stays with the equipment?
So we do have some other devices that are smaller. Yeah, I wouldn't call them spy trackers, but something that you can hide a little bit. They're cellular, so they've got a little more flexibility on where you can mount them. Mm-hmm. These are satellite, and we do have this one also has a cellular version. The GT2 has a cellular version. So you can sort of hide them a little bit, but you don't want to keep it from getting its sunlight to keep it charged. And then also you don't want to interfere like with the satellite. It does need to see the sky.
Yep.
You can mount them vertically, and but you kind of want to be mindful of that. And I don't build these as an anti-theft device, but it's funny that we do catch a lot of people, because they don't know what it is. It's just on,
right.
Or they don't see it. It's on the roof.
Yep.
But yeah, so recently in Midland we had a trailer stolen, and it had one of our GT1 units on here.
Okay.
So it had one of these on here, and then it had another one that was collecting runtime that they had added on, and they found this one because it was sitting out where they could see it. That's how they were tracking it previously, but then they added this runtime device, and they didn't catch that one. So they had it at a yard in Midland, and it reported again. So the customer went over there with the sheriff, and actually one of our other people went accompanied them as well, for posterity. And
get a biker gang to go
yeah,
with yours.
yeah, he was going to be backup for the sheriff, and they ended up catching over 30 pieces of equipment there, and actually two of the 4 thieves were actually there when they showed up, so they got them right away. So, I don't bill these as anti-theft, but it's funny how often we do catch them.
Okay.
And then a lot of times when they do recover the equipment, there's dozens of other pieces of equipment that have been stolen, so they get to solve a lot of crimes at once. And
y'all need to get rewards for stuff.
I keep saying that.
As a sales guy, it's like, here,
Absolutely.
rather do.
Absolutely.
Okay, so one thing you just said that was interesting was you were talking about this piece of equipment had 2 devices on it.
Yep.
So how often would somebody have a use case where they need more than one device? Because obviously that's going to cost more to have more than one device.
So in this particular case, it was that they were tracking it with one device, and then they purchased a different kind because they were interested in the runtime. They started with a dot on a map, and then they switched to the other one. So they had this one had run its course already, so they left it on there as kind of like a decoy. Is the idea?
Okay.
Yeah, and that's
the second. Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but the second device then would do everything else that the first device was doing. They just opted not to.
Yeah, they just didn't see it.
So someone properly thinking about their requirements is only going to have one device.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, but we do have some high theft areas, and some customers. We have customers down in Brazil. That's a real high theft area. They'll have 3 of these on one asset. Yeah, so we'll sell them old ones, or like one. We'll try to hang on to ones that have already run their course.
Yep.
Leave them in the obvious spots, and then put the one that's working in the not so obvious spots, so that we can recover as much equipment as possible.
Okay. So let's kind of shift to what somebody has to do to implement. So let's assume that I'm like an oil field services company. I started from scratch. I was on QuickBooks. I've grown. I've now got a number of vehicles. I've got some equipment. I want to track the vehicles. I want to monitor some stuff on the equipment. What happens? What happens to get me implemented? Because you've got devices, you got software, I assume y'all have to provision some connectivity for me.
Yep.
It's part of your service. So walk me through what that looks like in that scenario, and then I have a second scenario after that one.
Yeah, so just say you're a 100-unit company. You're in Midland. You've got some rental equipment. You got a few trucks. Let's assume you went to our website and kind of picked out what you're interested in. We got our vehicle trackers, so we'd have that piece. We get you some cameras because that's really, we're selling a ton of cameras right now. And then we've got, depending on what you want to collect as far as engine runtime or other information off your assets, or a lot of customers, they'll just start out with some GT1s, get some dots on a map and see kind of what the deal is. A lot of times that's kind of what people start with. So what they do is they call me, and then I kind of right size it and figure out what they need. We put in we order the devices. We're getting better. We're inside of a week usually to get inventory.
Yep.
Our inventory comes from Plano. That's where our home office is in the Dallas area. So we're usually inside of a week to get your items, and then we have an implementation manager who reaches out to you. We'll give you kind of the high level. Make sure you got a login, things like that. Make sure that your account, that all the devices got in there, at least on the programming side. And then we send you your items. And then when you get them, you would contact me. But I'm CC'd on the messaging, so I know when you got your stuff. So I usually reach out proactively. On an account that size, you'd also receive a second manager. Which would be a customer success manager. So you get the customer success manager and the account manager. So you get 2 people usually at Geoforce that are taking care of you. So between the 2 of us, we'll make sure that you're trained on the software. We'll make sure that you get trained on how to install your hardware, best mounting practices. We'll look at your equipment with you, find the best place to put everything depending on what you're trying to do. And then we even have field services people. So if you don't have a person to take care of that on your end, we have field service people that can do that. They're based in Louisiana and Midland, but we can go anywhere. We travel all over the country if need be, depending on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I signed the contract. Y'all order the devices. In terms of programming the device, so that, because you are attaching the device to the vehicle, I assume you want some metadata that says it's this truck, it's this, and all of that. Does that take much? You just train somebody on how to do that? They're configuring it in the software, or does your person kind of set it all up the first time?
So usually on the first time, we will give you a hand. We'll do the first couple alongside you, and then it's pretty intuitive, kind of how everything works. Now with like a vehicle tracker, all you need to do is go into the software and change the name. We would do what we call auto populating, where if you order 10 vehicle trackers, you're going to have 10 of them in your account, and all you'll have to do is change the name. The asset's been created already, so you can just go in there, change the name, and you're off and running. And then all the metadata that comes off of the vehicle pulls in automatically, like the VIN and the engine hours and the mileage and things like that. So you don't have to populate that yourself.
Okay, and that's because you're able to port it into.
That's right.
Okay,
that's
and
right.
Back to the alerts. So then, I'm going to jump ahead to one of my later questions, but it's relevant now. I'm renting equipment. I put my own device on there. I return the equipment. I take the device off, and then I put it on another piece of equipment.
Oh yeah.
So that data that I would see in the portal, because I want to mine that data, it's keeping track of, well, it was this piece of equipment, and here's a bunch of data. Now it could be a very different piece of equipment.
Oh yes.
And so is your software does it have analytics reporting and stuff that somebody would be able to easily slice and dice? Well, here's what happened with that one, and here's what happened with this one, even though it's the same device.
I'm glad you asked that question, because a lot of our people, they think that it's kind of a one shot, and they're like, well, we sold that one, so we need another unit. So they're very reusable. So you can archive the old asset, whether it's a vehicle or a trailer. You can archive that one. That way you've maintained all the history of whatever that one had collected. And then you can take this and reassign it to a new asset. So it's compartmentalized so that you avoid that confusion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one thing, and I don't remember if I saw this on the website or if I was just imagining this, we'll find out, is if I'm a rental company and I'm using these, am I able to, and so now I'm a customer of the rental company, and the rental company tells me, hey, I've already got devices on there. Am I able, do you have rental companies who share their data with somebody so that somebody could get information on a rented piece of equipment that you're working through the rental company?
Yeah, so that's real common. A lot of our customers, they're re-renting equipment from somewhere else, but they still want to know where it is. Now, whoever they rented it from, if they use Geoforce, which a lot of times they do, we have like what's called a share to account. So whoever's renting the equipment can have direct access, dependent on what the renter wants the rentee to see.
Okay.
So that we do share two accounts, and we don't charge for those. They're provided inclusive of the account. So that's pretty common. But then, a lot of these mount pretty, undestructively. So you can put these on a piece of rental equipment, keep it as long as you need it, and then take it off when you return it, and then get the next one, and you can archive that asset and move on to the next one.
And so just a quick tangent. I mean, are there environments that those devices, if you dropped a truck in a volcano, it's not going
Sure.
that device is going to get destroyed.
We've never tried it, so I can't say it wouldn't work in that circumstance.
Okay, so you're gonna go with.
I'll get with marketing on that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, you'll get your messaging around volcano drops
Yes.
together. But I mean, does it work underwater? I mean, where does it? There's got to be a limit somewhere.
Sure.
So what are the limits?
Yeah. So these are the most indestructible unit that exists. So they'll report anywhere on Earth, in any weather condition that exists on Earth. Negative, 50 degrees to hundreds of degrees. So in that case, they're as indestructible as you could find. We need to do some more stress testing on the volcano.
The volcanoes.
We're going to try that.
I'm glad to help you out. Now you go back to your testers.
and I'm glad you asked about like underwater. So they don't necessarily work, at depth, but if it's in shallow water or if they get wet or things like that, it's no problem. Now we did have a buoy that we were tracking because we do some offshore tracking. We actually have the buoy in our office in Plano. It's a kind of a point of pride. It's in our boardroom, and it had sunk to the bottom of the Gulf for several dozen days. It was several weeks, and then they pulled it up, and the Geoforce tracker, when it came back to the surface, started reporting in right away. So that's kind of one of our favorite stories to tell. But yeah, so as far as indestructibility, they're as good as you can find. And one other thing is they're Zone 0 certified, like we call Class 1 Dev 1. So we're certified to work near the wellhead, which that's in the oil and gas industry, that's an important thing. They don't create a spark, so you can use these even if you're doing perforating. That's a common question that we get is, because you got to turn off your cell phones and things like that.
Yep.
So in this case, you don't have to. You can just leave it going. It's not going to interfere with anything, and it's also then certified to not explode, and it's rated for explosive environments. So this is the only device on the market that can say that. So that's really our differentiator.
So let's shift gears to kind of a different scenario. The first scenario, the growing oil field services, they're kind of a greenfield that you can just come in, install it, and it sounds like that takes weeks. For the size company we were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so suppose I was a much larger company. I've already got devices. I have a EAM system that I'm tracking assets and maintenance and all that good stuff in. Mm-hmm. And now I'm like, I'm not as happy with the devices I have for whatever reason. I don't want to swap out 2,000 devices all at once. How would y'all approach that kind of scenario where somebody's going to incrementally swap out devices and you need data flowing into other systems that they have, that they're tracking their business already because it's a large company. They hopefully have some fairly sophisticated maintenance processes and asset processes. Maybe not, but we've all been there.
Yeah.
But so how would that scenario kind of play out?
So as far as our integratability goes, I would say we're pretty strong there. So if we were to implement in, say, a small batch, like a 2,000 unit customer, if we're going to show up with our first 100 as a batch, we can integrate pretty well, depending on the system that you're referring to. But if it's like a vehicle management software, things like that, we integrate with all the big ones.
Okay.
So that's what we would do in that case. Is we would batch it in. We like to train like a point of contact in each area. So if you got North Dakota people, we'll go to North Dakota and train them. If they're in Louisiana, if you get your Permian people, South Texas, Colorado, Wyoming, all the big oil and gas spots. Pennsylvania, I don't want to leave them out. I
don't know how many states you got left to go.
They get sensitive. Yeah, I don't want to list them all, but yeah. So yeah, we'll go anywhere and train and make sure that everybody at your company knows how to do it because and if you're doing 2,000 installs, you're going to need a lot of people to get it done.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's go back to the software and what a deal looks like. So I can buy the devices, I can pay for them over time. you've got connectivity that I can use, so I don't have to have my own satellite connections and all that good stuff. And then you've got the software. So are you charging for the software? Is that, can I just buy the devices and connect them to something I have? Or is it really a package? I've got to buy the devices and subscribe to some other service. How does that total deal look?
So that's another great thing about working with us. We don't a la carte you to death. We're very inclusive of what you're paying for this unit. You get everything.
Okay.
Pretty much everything. You're going to get, I get a lot of people ask me like if I have to pay for extra users or if there's a limit on that. We don't limit that. So if you're paying me for one unit, you can have 200 users on your account. We don't mind, and it costs you the same. We don't charge extra for that. Same like with your ELD drivers, because they're our competitors. That's one of our other differentiators. We have competitors that charge per driver, so they might get us on the upfront price for the device itself, but then they're charging you that price again to do ELDs and hours of service for your drivers, or they're charging you by the year. We don't do any of that. There's basically you pay for the service on the device, and then we don't charge anything else. There's no additional fees.
Okay, so if I was buying up front, I would buy up front, and then there is some service charge that's per month, per year.
Yeah. So
like a software maintenance.
Yeah. So like a cell phone bill. So once a month you get a bill for your service.
Okay.
If you haven't paid for the device up front, you used our rental model.
Yeah.
There would be
okay.
Yeah. So there'd be a small charge, just like if you buy your expensive iPhone and they tack on $20-$30 a month.
Yep.
So that you pay for the $1,000 unit. It works the same way, but not that expensive.
Okay. But then generally, oil and gas, business gets good, business gets less good sometimes.
Yes.
So if somebody ramps down, is there a way for them to turn in devices and lower their cost?
So yes, there is. So now we do contracts. If you're on a 36-month contract and the oil field just completely collapses in and you lose half your equipment and you're laying people off and the world's falling, we work with people on things like that. We're on a contract, but we're not monsters. So we're not going to hold your feet to the fire on things like that. Now, we're under a contract, but we're very flexible and we work with people, whether we can put something on hold or, a lot of times people have other things they could track. We're very flexible on a solution like that. Like during COVID, for example, there was a massive downturn and people were getting laid off left and right.
Right.
We had some customers where we put them on like a delayed billing or things like that, or and in some cases, if they had to shut it off, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do in that case. But we're flexible with people, and we're not, we don't hold people's feet.
And then, what kind of warranty does this have? Because if truck's in an accident, it catches on fire, the device survived, it had data on it, presumably that somebody can recover and analyze.
Yeah.
But people are not going to want to put a burn-up device on the next truck.
Yes.
And so that one, do they just have to buy a new one, or y'all have a warranty for some number of years that says here's when we'll replace it? How does that work?
Yeah. So everything kind of has a blanket 1-year warranty is generally what we're looking at. Now, if you're still under contract for the device, we'll work something out.
Yep.
You sign a 3-year contract and the thing stops working after a year and a half. We're going to figure something out that's favorable to you. Now, assuming this thing runs its life, it's past the contract and the warranty period. We do a replacement, just as an example, say it's a $200 unit, we'll sell you a replacement for, half that cost, reduce costs so that you're getting a new unit without having to, pay for a new one.
Okay, let me look at my list here to see if there's anything else. So back to when you were a customer success manager, the customers who are most successful, what behaviors, what did they tend to do so that they got the most value out of it? Your best customers, what were they like and what did they do?
So the best thing you can do is spread the culture, a culture of accountability and a culture of visibility on things down the chain. It helps if your whole organization is bought in, either whether that's through carrot or stick, incentive or threats for vehicle tracking. You don't want people unplugging or tampering with your units. You want people to cooperate, but if you can give them some incentives, that's something that we encourage a lot of our customers to do. Reward good drivers and pats on the back and shout outs and straight up bribes or gifts for good behavior and good driving. And then also you're with your assets, your asset managers are gonna, once they buy in and they see the value in not having to walk the yard to do inventory on what's there, or visibility on remote assets that were forgotten to be picked up. It's usually one incident where they would have lost something and then they didn't. That's total buy-in for that account.
Okay. So the opposite side, the customers that don't get value and are not happy, because every business, there is some customer somewhere that's unhappy.
Sure.
So the ones that it didn't work out, what tends to be the reason, either on their side or misfit between y'all's product? What tends to cause it that value didn't get generated?
Yeah. So I would say the times that I've had that happen, it's when the customer has somebody in charge of the GPS, somebody who's wearing too many hats. A lot of times this will be somebody's like third, fourth, fifth job. They're the safety man, but they're also the asset manager, and then they're doing payroll, but then, oh, by the way, I need you to be in charge of the GPS too. If it's an afterthought, that would be our least successful scenario. If we can get somebody who has the time and attention to get it implemented up front, that's where we're successful. Once it's rolling, it's great. It's if there's any failure, it's usually up front with getting it implemented, getting people to buy in. If they have maybe a bad safety culture, that's maybe not a great fit for us.
Okay. And what's like the strangest thing you've seen somebody do with one of these devices?
The strangest?
Yeah, it's just
we have some people that'll try to track something that's maybe a little too small. Maybe have a little expectations. I've seen this thing welded onto a tool that was maybe about the size of this, where it's welded and, it's maybe the size of a football and it's welded onto it. I would ask that guy to temper his expectations a little bit. You're asking a lot because, it's going to get kicked around or abused or, things like that, or that'll get set, in the mud or whatever face down. Things like that. But that I haven't.
Okay. What haven't I asked you so far that you're like, oh, I really want to talk about this?
So we are very much an oil field centric company. If you were going to ask me like why do business with us instead of somebody else? You've got some really big companies that have NASCAR teams and professional golfers and that they sponsor and things like that. Why do business with us? I would tell you we're specific to the oil field. We try to be co-located. I live in Midland, and we've got a team of people that are out there. We're in Houston, we're in South Texas, we're in Louisiana, we're in all the hot oil and gas spots. So if you're in oil and gas and you need to track your stuff, we're the ones to go with.
And so you said you're in 95 countries. So how much overseas? How much Middle East? How much whatever tends?
Yeah. So Brazil would be our largest.
Okay.
Our largest offshore or international, yeah, non-US location. Yeah, so we've got 9 people down there, and we're very big in like with Petrobras and with their offshore. We're very big in the Middle East. We're and then in the North Sea, off Scotland.
Yeah.
And then Southeast Asia around Australia. We have people in Australia and Vietnam. So we've kind of got the globe covered, and Canada as well.
Okay. And looking at the website, it looked like y'all do support other industries. So if oil and gas is your number one industry, what's number 2 or 3?
I would say mining and agriculture, and then also rail, some shipping. But then really, even the small delivery fleets, things like that, you could be in any business at all and still use us. We have accounts in Hawaii that are tracking, pineapple pickers and small vehicles and things like that. We've got in California, in the wine country, we're tracking stuff there. And I don't know if you saw our LinkedIn post. We tracked the Galapagos tortoises.
Oh, really?
They put one of these on their back to see where they were at.
So the tortoise could go, somebody put something pretty heavy on my back.
Yeah, he didn't know. They didn't mind. They didn't seem to mind.
Well, you don't know that.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay. So how best for potential customers to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so if you go to geoforce.com, www.geoforce.com, that's the best way. You can contact us. They've got to get a quote on there. Yeah, that way you can give us some contact information that we can get back to you.
Okay.
We've got a team of inside salespeople, and then if you're in the Permian, you can reach out to me directly. We'll put the phone number in the.
Okay. Yeah, I do like y'all's website because I know there's a lot of marketing companies these days that it's almost like they want it to be ambiguous what a company does.
Yeah.
And, as soon as I hit y'all's website, it was like, okay, I know what this company does from past experience. So I liked that. I think you've answered a lot of my questions that if I was a buyer, I would be wanting to understand, because what I tend to get focused on is, okay, the product can sound great, et cetera, but how do I actually get it implemented? Mm-hmm. What does it take to keep it running? And it sounds like y'all are providing a pretty complete service. Mm-hmm. Obviously we're not talking about exactly what it costs, and people would have to, look at their numbers themselves, but the kind of plug and play aspect of it to me seems pretty productive, particularly if I was at a middle market company. That would be an easier conversation that, doesn't have like an IT department, a significant IT department, or all of that. So how much do y'all, obviously everybody would like to get the biggest customers they could get. When y'all are kind of going to market, how are you focusing on middle market versus large company? How do you look at that?
Yeah, I would say the mid market is our target audience. We have some very big international oil companies, producers. We've got some really big ones. Several of them use us for their vehicle fleets. But I would say our target audience would be like a mid-market company, somebody who doesn't have a person who's dedicated to this, somebody that we can support, and kind of we do the lifting for them as far as managing the account, because you get me, the account manager, you get your customer success manager. We've got a support team as well. So you get we're kind of a force multiplier for a small or a mid-sized company. Those are really the ones that we. Okay. Yeah.
So when you were a customer, what type of company was that?
It was mid-size. It was a rental company, had about 202 to 250 assets, and then also a mixed fleet with some vehicles and pickups. So we would track our vehicles. One of our big reasons, or our initial reason for using Geoforce, and we were one of the first customers in the Permian back in 2011.
Okay.
The primary use was we would have billing disputes all the time, And we did a case study with Geoforce to testify to this. There was a lot of billing disputes with, well, how many days did you have my piece of equipment? Did you have it for 25? Did you have it for 18? And the customer would say, whatever the customer says is what you have to go with, because you didn't have GPS to prove them wrong. But once we got the GPSs, it literally reduced the arguments by 97%. We're talking, half of all invoices being disputed at some point or another to almost none. So that was really the reason that I got into working with Geoforce initially, was that the disputing with the rental.
You just didn't like arguing with customers?
Yeah, well, it's great to have the argument and be right and be able to prove it. Yeah, you're only right if you can prove it.
So if you like to win arguments, then this helps you win arguments.
Yes. Yeah. Whether it's with the cops or safety or with somebody that ran into you on the road, this is an argument winner. That's exactly right.
Which is always a nice thing to have in the back pocket.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to add before we close out?
No, I think that's it. No, just thank you for having us on, and we really appreciate it.
No, this was an interesting conversation, and you said it at the beginning. Those things are heavier than.
Yeah, I was going to drop it on the table, but
yeah, the sound. The sound police said, "Do not be banging stuff around." So we could do that now, just to mess things up if we wanted to. All right. Well, thank you very much. And for the viewers out there, we do want to get reviews, comments. If there's questions as we do this show that you would say, Casey, you're not asking some of the right questions, well, then put it out there. Let us see what you want to get from the show as we bring more providers on here. So thank you again very much. And this was a good discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to OGGN, the world's largest and most listened to podcast network for the oil and energy industry. If you like this show, leave us a review and then go to OGGN.com to learn about all our other shows. And don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter. This show has been a production of the Oil and Gas Global Network.